Johnson Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica, the Honorable Albany Hill, Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce of Jamaica, Her Excellency Sheila Monteith Seeley, Permanent Secretary and Head of the Foreign Service, Mr. Gervais Warner, Chairman of the CPSO, Dr. Patrick Antoine, CEO and Chief Technical Director of the CPSO, esteemed private sector leaders, regional partners, media, and of course, friends. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this morning for the joint breakfast forum being hosted kindly by our sponsor, Sandals Resource International, in association with the PSOJ and the Caribbean Private Sector Organization. It is our pleasure to welcome you to Montego Bay. So, I am the moderator for this morning's proceedings, and I'm Sasha Vassiana Riley, the Executive Director of the Private Sector Organization. So we will start with the playing of the National Anthem of Jamaica, and I ask you to all rise for the playing of the anthem.
Our national anthem represents the beauty, pride, strength, and resilience of Jamaica and our people. My name is Ziggy Marley. Please stand while we honor Jamaica, our culture, and our history.
Be seated. You will find in your package an agenda for this morning's proceedings. We will start, as usual, by invoking the presence of the Lord. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, we pause in gratitude this morning, giving thanks for the breath of life, for the blessing of leadership, and for the gift of gathering across shores and sectors, governments and private enterprise, united in purpose and committed to progress. We acknowledge you as the source of all wisdom. Grant our heads of government discernment, compassion, and courage as they deliberate today. May they be guided by a spirit of respect for all, a hunger for justice, and a deep-rooted love for their people and their homeland. We thank you for the service and stewardship of the outgoing chair of our regional community, the Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados, who is unavoidably absent, whose leadership has stirred hearts, lifted voices, and strengthened the bonds among us. As new leadership takes up the chair of our regional community, we ask for an extra measure of grace, grace to unify, to advance people and prosperity, and to inspire bold steps towards deeper collaboration. May vision be clear and resolve steadfast, even when challenges loom large. Let the shared dreams of our Caribbean peoples resound, for peace within our borders, for disciplined and faithful leadership, and for strength as a people, firm, united, and free. Where our histories have carried burdens, let our future be marked by dignity. Where our economies have faced hardship, let new opportunity rise like the morning sun over calm waters. Let this moment of gathering also remind us of our shared responsibility across every island territory, from verdant hills to coral reefs. Remind us that our nations may be small in land, but we are mighty in purpose. And when we stand together, public and private sector, we build not only economies, but hope, heritage, and harmony. May our decisions today echo with love of freedom, honor for service, and loyalty to the cause of regional unity. Let every voice, whether from plains, valleys, mountain peaks, or coastal breeze, be uplifted in a chorus of cooperation and mutual respect. Bless our time here, O Lord. Bless the hands that serve, the minds that lead, and the hearts that dream of a better Caribbean. Amen. I will now invite the President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Mr. Mitri Siaga, to give some opening remarks on behalf of the PSOJ.
Morning. Morning, everyone. I'm going to ask you to allow me to observe the protocols that have already been established, even though I am the host today. In the interest of time, I understand that you had a late night last night, PM, and others, so I'm going to ask you to allow me to just say all protocols observed. It was 2 pages of my speech anyway. Let me start by extending a very warm welcome to all the heads of government, CARICOM officials, private sector colleagues, and our regional partners. It is indeed an honor for the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica to co-host this forum alongside the Caribbean Private Sector Organization, especially in the context of the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. These are the kinds of conversations that matter, not the talk shop kind, but the ones that lead to real change, real decisions, and real outcomes for our people and for our economies. We are here today because we all share one common truth. The Caribbean nations cannot afford to keep battling alone. In a world of shifting alliances and rising protectionism, our success, indeed our survival, depends on how well we work together. Regional integration isn't just a lofty ideal anymore. It is a necessity, and not just for governments, but for businesses too, for jobs, and for the quality of life that we all want to secure for future generations. We need to look to each other more. Businesses must start seeing regional neighbors as partners, not just competitors. Whether it's a Jamaican manufacturer teaming up with a Bayesian distributor or a St. Lucian tech firm building solutions with a Trinidadian developer, these are the kinds of linkages that drive regional value chains. We've seen it work in other trading blocks, and we too must make it work. Let me be clear, the private sector, under my leadership, is ready to step up, but we need the right conditions to do so. That means harmonized regulations. It means clearing the bottlenecks at the ports. It means a customs system that's efficient and digital, not slow and paper-based. And yes, it means modern infrastructure, logistics, energy, and technology that can support real growth. We fully support the goals of the CARICOM single market and economy, but those goals need action. We need to tear down the non-tariff barriers that make trade between our islands harder than it is to have trade with countries that are thousands of miles away. Let us simplify the protocols. Let's make it easier to do business across our respective borders. We have the talent, the creativity, and the natural resources. And with the right framework, we can finally compete on a global scale. To our heads of government here today, we need bold leadership now more than ever. Policies that reduce the cost of doing business, that foster innovation, and attract the kind of investment that builds jobs and exports. We don't need more red tape, we need more action. Practical, pragmatic decisions that will unlock our regional potential. Let me close this morning by saying this. I remain confident in the power of Caribbean people, confident in our private sector's willingness to collaborate, confident in our West Indies cricket team. I am still one of the long sufferers, yes. And I'll remind everybody that there's cricket at Savannah Park next week, a day-night match. Please come out and enjoy. And I'm also confident, folks, in our private sector's willingness to collaborate. And confident that if we leave this room today, not just having talked, but having continued and committed to some concrete next steps, we can make real headway. The PSOJ is all in on regional integration. We are ready to do the work, and I look forward to the conversations that will follow today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, President Mitri. So we will now take some remarks from our co-host. Mr. Gervais Warner is the chairman of the CPSO. While he makes his way to the podium, I would just like to thank our host, Sandals Montego Bay. I am sure you're enjoying your delectable fare. And so we have to give a round of applause to the wonderful, excellent, gold standard Sandal teams. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Please come.
Good morning, everyone. This is a fantastic gathering. Really a unique occasion. PM Holness, thank you so much for accepting speaking here today and being with us. Thank you to all of the leaders, CARICOM leaders who are here present, those representing leaders. This is a rare opportunity that we have today to engage in some dialogue. And so I want to acknowledge the PSOJ for this idea of trying to pull together some private sector leaders as well as heads of government to have a conversation about what we can do to further our regional integration agenda. Thank you, Adam and team Sandals, for hosting. This is a wonderful venue, and we really appreciate your generosity. Prime Minister Holness, in your address, you had a theme around cooperation and unity that I'd like to build on. I want to add the word urgency to the agenda that we have in front of us. You see, the United States America First policy is a wake-up call. The first thing that we experienced was this threat of increasing shipping costs by the U.S. Trade Representative saying that they were going to charge additional fees to shipping companies. We have Tropical Shipping and Seaboard Marine here with us today. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for your support in that initiative. This was an amazing occasion of complete collaboration across multiple sectors of our society, where private sector, lobbyists, private sector based in the United States, different chambers of commerce. We had Zoom calls with over 500 people on it to discuss this issue. We were able to spend time with heads in special meetings to brief them, wrote papers, made lots of appeals, and we dodged a bullet, right? Shipping costs to this region were spared an extra $1,500 to $2,500 per container by the collective efforts in this room. And I raise that example as really important for the paradigm of collaboration that we can have and forge going forward. And we are not short of challenges. We have tons and tons and tons of challenges facing us. One of the I want to go through a few examples, concrete examples we have for this new paradigm of collaboration. And I'm going through these so that as we break into the Q&A and engagement, section of this morning, we could know some context for some of the things that are in discussion. So one of my favorite is this idea of a regional stock exchange or regional capital markets. Now, there are many of us who do business across the Caribbean. Yesterday, Prime Minister Motley bemoaned the fact that there's over $5 billion of savings that are not earning savers and pensioners good returns. Meanwhile, there are investment opportunities that go lacking for funds. And how can we find a way to integrate our financial systems across markets so that where there are good investment opportunities, there are also the meeting of the need for savers to get better returns? We have tons of regulatory and systematic barriers that prevent this from happening. The Regional Stock Exchange is an initiative which is being well embraced by heads as well as by the private sector, is a major foray into trying to break that deadlock. Now, it's taking a while because we've taken the African journey of going together so we could go far, as opposed to going alone and trying to go fast. So that's one of the concepts. The other one we spent some time talking about last night. So everybody would appreciate how important information technology, high-speed data, AI, every big data is to our fundamental basic development as people and economies. We have a situation in which our ability to continue to invest in and upgrade and keep working our digital infrastructure is being threatened by the economics of how big tech works. And so it used to be, I used to be a telecom guy, I used to work for AT&T. It used to be the telecommunications companies were darlings, they used to make a lot of money. Now telecommunications are a struggling industry as it's bypassed by the people who put stuff on top of the telecom. And so there's a shift that needs to happen where the rents are being made, and how can we begin a conversation within our small economies so that where the rents are being made can also invest in the infrastructure that is necessary for all of us to keep up with the rest of the world. So that's a big subject. Again, private sector working very closely with heads. We had a robust conversation. I know there's a big initiative here with the Universal Service Fund in Jamaica, but this is an issue that if we don't address, we are going to find that we get cut off from the development of the rest of the world. We also have a really interesting project around maritime transportation in the Caribbean. So this is ferry services, think about this, from the top part of the Eastern Caribbean all the way down to Guyana. Eventually, we could expand to the western part of the Caribbean. So I know I'm in Jamaica, and this opportunity isn't starting here, but I think you guys know that Jamaica kind of far, right? But think of the possibilities of passengers being able to jump onto ships with their cars and roll through to another country. Think of the possibility of the interliner freight between our islands if we could get that going. Many of us who are in the distribution business, thank you for Seaboard and Tropical, you're very helpful to us. But there's a lot of opportunity for trade intra-regionally that goes a-begging because we don't have that infrastructure. So that's yet another one. Now, many of us, in fact, I think you can't live on the planet and not know about the U.S. tariff, reciprocal tariff imposition, the position that the United States has taken on imposition of 10% minimum tariffs. And of course, I think we are very fortunate in the sense of, I think our heads of government here in CARICOM have really come together to figure out how we negotiate this as a bloc. But this is, I don't think we appreciate the threat that this represents to our economies. When we, in the CARICOM private sector organization, have done some analytical work, this represents like $550 million of potential lost exports to the United States. $550 any of us can afford to cut ourselves off of that foreign exchange flow? No, we can't. So there are efforts that we have to think about to diversify our export markets. There are efforts we have to think about of how we approach the United States for a negotiation that has them recognize us in a different strategic light. In fact, when we were doing the negotiations around the Chinese vessel port fees, one of the things that worked for us is that the Caribbean is a strategic third border to the United States. When the issue that the United States has with shipbuilding in China is they don't want the Chinese to continue to monopolize shipbuilding. There is an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that we could pursue an opportunity to actually bring some shipbuilding into this region. If you think about some of our countries where we've had energy sector capability with engineering, steel manufacturing, electrical and instrumentation, we have some skill sets, whether it is through the US Virgin Islands in St. Croix, Trinidad and Tobago, what's happening in Guyana. We have some assets that could be used to be a strategic partner with the United States in this diversification of shipbuilding away from just purely China. So that's one of the concepts that we are thinking about, and I think there's some people in the room who will share when we break out that there is some open road for the Caribbean in the United States on both sides of the aisle, because it's one of the few things that they could get some bipartisan agreement on, that the Caribbean should be a friend to the United States. So I think that's a pathway for us to use in pursuing not just relief from policies, but also opportunities for us to be more strategic with the United States. But we have some challenges, and I really appreciated yesterday. I was able to bear witness to the challenge that was explicitly discussed around the doubt of whether the CSME thing could really work. I think we all have these conversations in pockets. This CARICOM thing, can it really work? Is it really beneficial? I mean, we've been on this journey for 60 odd years, but is it? I mean, it's not doing what we really expected it to do. And I am delighted to say that, listen, I mean, I saw heads really speak very frankly about their joint commitment to this project. I think that we in the private sector can assist in the speed at which we actually get to the vision that we have for CSME. And today is one of those few days where we can see the power of the new paradigm of engagement, because we have with us in this room powerful heads of government within this region here to spend a couple of hours with us having a discussion about how we can accelerate the pace at which we work together. And ladies and gentlemen, that is absolutely the most important element and ingredient for our success going forward. So I do want to close off by thanking the heads and their representatives for being here, thanking you for coming to this breakfast. Clearly, our future is not something that we can afford to send out to somebody else to create for us. We must create it for ourselves. We in the private sector, we have a role to play. Some of the issues we have around trade, we're complicit in. We go to our government and say, well, no, we need some protection because if they come in here, we won't be able to survive. And a lot of barriers, whether they be through duties or whether they're through non-tariff barriers, we have helped to erect ourselves. And when we talk about, yes, we need to remove these non-tariff barriers, we have a role in removing those non-tariff barriers and speaking up. Because they're usually just a handful of people or businesses in one particular industry who are holding progress back. And we collectively must be making the arguments to our governments and giving the confidence and the power that we must proceed to go ahead and get this done. So thank you again for being here. I hope we can have a fantastic set of conversations, honest and back and forth. You know, private sector asking questions, heads, governments asking questions of us. Enjoy your meal, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Warner. I believe he has done a very good job of whetting our appetites for the presentation which is to follow from his Chief Executive Officer and Technical Director, Dr. Patrick Antoine. As Dr. Antoine makes his way to the podium, I would just like to recognize, in addition to our main sponsor, Sandals Resorts International, I would like to recognize and thank our other sponsors, including Wisinco, Seprod, the Musson Group, and Rainforest. Give them a round of applause, please.
Thank you, and good morning to all. I am going to step a little out of the way so that you have good line of sight of the screen. Fantastic. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning as the CEO and Technical Director of the CPSO, and to, of course, follow with that just absolutely profound remarks that was given by our chairman, Gervais Warner. Three things. I want to recognize the CPSO team in the room. A lot of the work that we do deliberately, the executive committee of the CPSO structured the organization so that it would sit upon the existing capacity in the business support organizations. And so what we have brought to the table is a technical capacity, largely empirical and analytical. And so a lot of the work that we do really in bringing the agendas of the BSOs together and championing the causes from the private sector has taken on an empirical and analytical orientation. And that's what I'm going to be getting into very quickly. And only to say that at the end of this, it will become very obvious to you that we've made substantial progress as a community. As a community, because now we've closed the gap between the public sector, the CARICOM Secretariat, and the private sector. And we're working together as a team in all of these endeavors. So very quickly, I want to take you through this presentation, which is going to look at the tariff impact. We had committed not to share the results of the tariff impact at a country level and at a product level until we had presented it to the heads of government. And so this is the first time that we're actually going to be speaking at a product and country level to what the impact of the America First policies in terms of the reciprocal tariff looks like. And after we have finished the presentation with you, we will have a more general presentation to the community. So the first thing we're going to do is to look at the tariff impact. The second thing we're going to do is to look at what is in fact a very useful construct of what we call the inflation pass-through effects, which comes from goods that come through the US but are not sourced in the United States. And that's really important because as net importing countries, that has a major bearing on us. The third thing is to talk about what the outlook looks like. We're also going to talk about two other issues, not focusing on the USTR measures, but we are going to talk about the IMO global emissions tax and the implications for us. So very quickly, I want to give credit to, I see Wayne smiling, because immediately on the announcement of this measure, Wayne McCook, ESG McCook and I got together on the phone, and he and I sort of conjectured that 10 was the new zero. And we have sort of titled this section, 10 is the new zero, and we're looking at strategic repositioning. So what we've done with the analytical models, and we've worked along with an expert working group from CARICOM. We've also worked with some colleagues from the World Bank on the other side, and I'm happy to tell you that the results that we've come to and the results that the World Bank's coming to are very, very consistent. So are the models, interestingly enough. But I also want to give credit to the Executive Committee, because the very week that the reciprocal tariffs were announced, the Executive Committee gave us a mandate as the CPSO Secretariat to begin work on this. And that's what's allowed us to build out the data and to start the work and to have results that have very strategically fed into this process. And so looking at the slide, if we take out the sort of petro products, we've taken out all the exemptions that the U.S. Reciprocal tariffs measures has identified, we then come to what the impacts look like by country. We've not just, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, focused on the CSME. We've heard you in previous heads of governments meeting, and we've actually done all of the community, including the associated members and so on. So we have a whole of community approach, and then we have another approach for the CSME. So Trinidad and Tobago turns out to be the country that will lose the most in terms of export revenues, followed by the Bahamas, interestingly. And Prime Minister or Chairman Gervais has asked us to do a specific supplement on the Bahamas, which is ready for you. We also plan to develop supplements for all the countries. So the third most impacted country is Haiti. A lot of textiles and apparels. Fourth is Guyana. But interestingly for Guyana, if you look at the impact of the tariff at 10%, you see it's about $89.7 million loss. But if it goes to 38%, you're seeing that it's an additional $27.9 million loss. What's also interesting is that at 38%, when we look at the results, a lot of the sectors that we export from the context of Guyana turned out to be sectors that are not going to be sustained. So we know that at a 38% tariff level into the United States, a number of our sectors, particularly agriculture, are not going to make it. The other countries are before you, Suriname. I see the Prime Minister of Belize and his Foreign Minister here. Belize is down to about $11.7 million. And so we have it by country. And I just wanted to go very quickly to look at the sectors. It turns out that the most impacted sector is agriculture and food after base metals and articles thereof. And so the hashed area is if we included Guyana at 38%. If we take the 38% out, and we well presume that Guyana will be sort of included in the 10% rate, then you see that agriculture ends up being the second most impacted sector. And of course, given everything that we've done, this turns out to be a matter of great concern. And again, all the sectors are reflected here. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through them. I'm just going to give you a sort of taste of what the product outcomes look like. And this is where I'm going to ask my colleagues to switch. So what we've done is that we have listed by the export revenue loss, the top 100, but we have it for all the products exported from CARICOM. We also have it for every country. And it's very different by country, as you can well tell, given the export composition into the United States. And so you see, for instance, in the case of the 22nd most impacted product would be fish frozen, and it turns out that the fish and fish product sector is a sector that's highly impacted, hence the Bahamas, rock lobsters, etc. But you can see that we also have crustaceans and sugars, and then you also have the apparels that we've spoken about. And always showing you here again, it's not to spend time on the results, but it's to show you that in what we're going to be presenting at the community level when we have this webinar, we will have all of this there for you. We can go back. So where does this take us? This takes us to the total export loss for CARICOM. the community as a whole at 10%, not at the 38 for Guyana, at 10, we end up losing about $542 million per annum. A substantial loss for the community per annum. And so I think this is important for us to reflect on, because in asking the question, is this worth fighting for? I think you find the answer there. And so what we've done as well is that we've also done some other work. We've asked ourselves the question, look, given now that there is this process that the USTR has started of biennial reviews, comments for the biennial review of the CBI beneficiary status for the countries, which of course the comments must go in by the 16th of July, right? What does the performance in the context of the reciprocal tariffs and the existing CBI looks like? It's actually quite unique, because we now have with and we now have without. In short, we have with the CBI, which was the previous zero, and we now have sort of without, where we now at 10%. So it actually gives us a very interesting view of the state of play with the United States, and of course, it gives us an opportunity to run analysis and ask ourselves the question, what does the long-run growth performance under the CBI look like? And of course, the results, it tells you here that it's significant, that there are a number of significant sectors like coffee and uncooked pasta and rum, for which the CBI preferences are significant. And so we've identified 27 of the fast, sound, good performance under the CBI, and we've identified those as products for which the CBI itself is beneficial. We've run that analysis for all of the sectors, and it takes us to another level of analysis as well, which is important for heads and certainly important for the private sector. In terms of the value of the CBI, it's really important for Jamaica. We've seen the number of tariff lines under which the countries have been exported with the CBI preferences, going up for Jamaica, going up for Guyana, and going up for Trinidad and Tobago. And we can see the analysis we've done on a long-run basis. We've divided it into two periods. The first period is 2000 to 2007, and the second period, 2017 to 2024. And you can see for Jamaica, we are in fact utilizing more of the preferences. So you can see we move from 86 to 104 lines in terms of the CBI preferences. We've done that also for Guyana, Trinidad, and Tobago. For Belize, it's been a steady performance. You can see it from here. The number of lines that Belize is exporting remains at 16. Again, the U.S. has argued that we're not utilizing the preferences sufficiently. What we've said is that, look, this is an opportunity for us to expand within the CBI, but we want the U.S. and others, because it is a review process. This is not about the U.S., it's about whether we are utilizing the preferences. We want them to recognize that there are some countries that have been increasing, so the story is not the same for all the countries, but we've been able to dissect the results that way. So also importantly, you can see that the agri-food sector grew. That's an important story. Because if I'm telling you on the one hand that the agricultural sector, the agri-food sector is most vulnerable, and I'm telling you at the same time that the sector that's growing is the agri-food sector, then this is absolutely significant. So the agri-food sector actually grew from 3.1% per annum from $99 million to $224 million. We want to protect that growth, is the bottom line. So there's an interesting story that our review process must tell where this is concerned. Now, the USTR process, when they do it from the USTR's perspective, does not always tell the story in this way, and that's why we thought it important, not just to look at the biennial review, period to period, but to look at the long-run growth performance of our exports under the CBI program. So also here, the CBI lines in the context of Belize, again, accounts for 39.1%, again significant. And in the context of Jamaica, 36.6% of exports. And again, we're going to be presenting this, but I want you to understand, because today, as we stand, member states should be engaged in this process of doing their submissions under the comments process, which is due by the 16th of July. So, given the impact of the reciprocal tariffs, is all lost. We've already established that it's extremely important. We've established for which sectors and which products it's important. We now ask ourselves the question, is it lost? And I want to give my colleagues at the GMEA, if they're here, they will recognize this, the credit for pushing us to do this analysis for them. Since then, the Trinidad and Tobago government and others have asked us to do the same analysis, but Jamaica has such a large footprint that we thought it important to reflect the Jamaican story here. For the exports from Jamaica going into the United States, we have divided this into 4 quadrants. We have the fast growth in terms of world price. Is it growing faster or slower than the world price? And we've also looked at it in terms of the growth in market demand. Is it growing faster or slower than market demand? And for Jamaica's exports into the US, there are 128 tariff lines for which the impact of the reciprocal tariff is a reduction of 8.6%. And let me put that another way. In the fast growth demand and fast growth price segment, there are 128 product lines. For those products, the reduction in the export revenue is 8.6%. So if you are making margins of 30%, it still makes sense for you to export to the United States. So all is not lost. Now, I will come later to tell you that there are instances where our inefficiency from trade facilitation, inefficiency at ports, etc., accounts for nearly 10% of the export value of some of our products in some of the countries. So again, if we were to drive down the exports, drive down the inefficiencies, we could in fact overcompensate for the loss. So this is important because we now need to deepen the growth opportunities for CARICOM. We need to in fact look at how we can drive demand for these products and to drive demand for products that are more resilient to price shocks. And most importantly, for those products in the 4th quadrant, we need to safeguard them. And that's important too as we go into the review process. So again, where all of this takes us is this. There are some products and some countries where the issue of imports become important. And so we've asked ourselves the question, for the sectors where we're going to be heavily impacted, can we find other sources of imports for the community? And we've run the analysis and it shows that of the goods that we import, if you look at our numbers tell you about 19% of those only pass through the US. They're not sourced in the US. If you believe the World Bank numbers, and I say believe smiling because I think that it's going to lie somewhere in the center, they're arguing about 10% passes through. And so somewhere inside of there is a pass-through effect of goods passing through between 10 and 20%. And the bottom line is that we can find alternative sources for those imports, though we have some more work to do at the private sector level, beyond prices and beyond availability, in seeing whether these opportunities are viable. Now, I wanted to just say very quickly that for many of these opportunities, there are substantial cost savings. In short, looking at what we pay for imports from the US and looking at what we pay for imports from some of those countries, there are in fact cost savings. Now, we're not advocating or saying that for all of these, the opportunities are going to be there, but we are saying that we need to in fact look at some of those. Very quickly, it takes us to a CARICOM response. So all we're saying in the context of all of this is to look at logistics and connectivity. We need to look at the impact on the negotiations that we have, because about 70% of the goods that we export are not consumed in the community. And most importantly, we need to look at nearshoring. The Dominican Republic has benefited substantially, even over this period, by increasing the number of special economic zones. They have increased from 82 to 92 free zones. We now need to put the legislation in place. So we have the opportunity in CARICOM to have the special economic zones that's harmonized, so that when you produce inside the free zone, the issue is, can you in fact export into the community? Those are some issues we need to look at, but they're very, very important. Now, let me say very quickly, as we move on, the important thing for us as we leave here is that asking for CBI parity alone is not enough. There are only X number of products exported inside the CBI preferences, but we have a list of products that are not benefiting from the CBI preferences, but which are sound, good performers into the United States that are also subject to the 10%. So to ask for retention of the CBI preferences alone will still expose all of those exports that we've done well in. So we've articulated from the private sector's perspective that we need to ask for what we've called a CBI plus position, which is the position status quo ante. And very quickly, what we're doing in the CPSO at this time is that we've run the analysis and we are going to be making a submission along with our colleagues from the private sector, the U.S. Business Council, Tropical Shipping, and others. We're going to be making a submission, and we have to do that by the first quarter 2025. But we've also run the numbers to assist member states in making their own submissions. We promised the tourism sector that we would identify the issues that they are facing in terms of the advisories and the impact this has on them at a time when costs has been increasing. And what we've said here, based on the results that we're getting, for instance, for the 5 small countries, based on the leaked report that there is a process ongoing, is that already we've seen a decline in bookings by 43%. This is a matter of great concern, and we've also seen a decline in confidence in the market based on the advisories. And all we're asking the countries to be mindful of is to avoid what we call own goals. To avoid, we understand that the genesis of this is not from the country's perspective, because the US has linked this to other things. But there are some issues that we believe the countries need to take a very close look at, and we've called those own goals. We've also identified a response as what we're doing with sandals, where by looking at sourcing between all hotels and all sectors, including tourism and entertainment, we can help to de-risk some of this. The last thing I want to point to very quickly is to say to you that Prime Minister Motley spoke about opportunities, but we're not just talking about them, we're telling you that the analysis shows about 755 opportunities that we've looked at, regularly traded product. 300 plus of these opportunities exist for products that we can tell you what they are in the CSME. And of those opportunities, 155 of those opportunities are for products that are on the ineligibles list, which means that we're saying to the world, we can produce these products and there is no need for us to have any regime that allows them to enter our CSME with special concessions, either by suspensions or lowering the duty. We're saying that the opportunities exist even there, which means that we're not producing even for what we call the holy grail of products that we've said we can produce and there is no need for that. So there's scope in the CSME. And of these opportunities, 178% of them, of these opportunities, are in fact products that are not inside the ineligibles list. So I just wanted to say to you that 125% of these opportunities are in agriculture, and to show you what they are. 56% of regularly traded agricultural products are growth opportunities. But of these opportunities, only 66% of them are utilized. So again, we have what the products are in the CSME and what the opportunities are for trade. So when Prime Minister Motley talks about focusing more on the CSME, the results of all the analysis shows that we're not utilizing a tremendous amount of the market opportunities that exist, and I will give you this again from GMEA. A lot of the prices for those opportunities for the products are better in CARICOM than they are in the United States markets. And so it takes us very quickly to what we need to do in terms of getting the CSME going. Chairman Warner spoke about the NTBs. We recognize that there's a need for us to look at some rule changes. There's a need for us to look at nearshoring. The minister from Jamaica talks about attracting investment all the time. We need to look at attracting investment. And my last point is this. We've succeeded because we convinced the United States of a concept called nearshoring. We beat every single alley and knocked on all the doors of influence. Ourselves, Tropical, with the support of our colleagues from the Atlantic Council who is here with us, hammering this concept of nearshoring, convincing the administration that it was good for them and it was good for us. And what we have now is that having accepted that nearshoring for countries like ours means that if we had the USTR measures placed on China-built vessels, for countries that benefit from nearshoring because we are so close together, the impact on cost and prices would be too high. Having convinced them of that, this is the dilemma. Many of our countries have signed on to the IMO's global carbon tax. It's a difficult one because on the one hand we support this issue of how we deal with climate and the environment. But on the other hand, the global carbon tax will increase for countries like ours the cost of shipping and the cost of services into our countries substantially. I want that to sink in because it's not been ventilated sufficiently in CARICOM. And what the US policymakers are now doing is that they're now using the same concept of short sea shipping to ask the provocative question. For countries like ours, so they have now used it, that benefit from short sea shipping with Mexico and the Caribbean, it will increase cost. So how come for countries like yours, you have now supported the IMO global carbon tax when you are also the ones who convinced us of short sea shipping, and we gave you concessions based on short sea shipping for China-built vessels? There is a contradiction, but it gets worse. We now have communications between various players in influential places in the US where they are raising this matter frontally. And they're also saying that in the context of trade negotiations and trade engagements, that the countries that support the IMO global carbon tax, that should be used as one of the criteria to determine how the US now treats with them going forward. We have a contradiction. It is a contradiction that we can no longer duck from because we are in fact supposed to be signing in October 2025. And so we raise for the benefit of our private sector colleagues and certainly to implore heads to do the following. Include us. You know, we have begged to be included in the discussions on this matter as a private sector for at least 2 years. We have not benefited from the inclusion in the way that ASG McCook has included us, for instance, in the work on external trade negotiations. An excellent example of what the region needs to do. But we are at the 11th hour. And so the cruise lines are saying they can't bear it. Carnival Cruise Lines and others have come together and said, but this is going to kill us. The shippers, they're in the room, they've said, this is going to devastate us. And our US friends are now saying, how come you have now emerged with this contradiction? We are calling at this breakfast meeting for an urgent convening of a technical working group to deal with this. We have to be consistent. We have to make progress on this matter. Secondly, we believe that without prejudice to the convening of the working group, we need to talk about us needing more time to implement. We have people from the port authorities in the room. The ports are not ready. Our sector is not ready. Our community is not ready. So I pivot back to the tourism sector. And they've said to us, make a plea for us. You're going to be here with sandals. They reminded us that Adam and Gervais would be here in this room. All of these things are piling cost on to the tourism sector at a time when they are pretty vulnerable because things are changing rapidly. And so we're also saying that our hope is that at some stage we can find a way to exclude the countries in CARICOM from this, but we raise that it's going to impact us if we're not cautious going forward. And so we wrap up by saying the following. We now know, Chairman Warner said it, we have a model. We have a model that works. As we sit with you at this breakfast session this morning, we're ready. ASG McCook, ASG Samuel, we've been working together in a way that we've not worked for decades as a team. And we have the team assembled and the work coming out to drive what we call the strategic trade policy. The CPSO is happy and committed to being a part of that. The second thing we have now perfected is the partnership strategy. Atlantic Council, Seaboard. We have with us Tropical Shipping. We have colleagues, Raul Herrera is here from a firm who has been part of the CPSO US Business Council. We've used all of this, not just in engagements in CARICOM, but in engaging with the partners in the United States to get the results we want. Chairman Warner spoke about it. So we have an engagement strategy we've perfected. We need to have the diplomatic strategy support this, because one of the shocking things is that the US TR measure showed us that the diplomats often had to revert to capitals, and sometimes it was too slow. Jamaica may be an exception, but the other countries, it's too slow, it's too ponderous. So we need a joined-up diplomatic strategy, because I want to thank Jennifer and our colleagues from Atlantic Council. They were the ones who convened the diplomatic missions in New York to meet us. And then finally, we need a political strategy. And I'm happy that this is happening at this time with the Prime Minister of Jamaica at the helm, because we know that he takes decisions, we know that he's pragmatic, and we also know that there is no time for us to waste. And so we believe that if we continue to engage these 5 prongs of the strategy, our community and our private sector will do well. If we had done this on the global carbon tax, we would not be here today speaking of this matter. And so, as we wrap up, the private sector, the CPSO, is ready. We are competent, we are engaged, and we are committed to working for you. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause for Dr. Antoine, a very detailed, informative, and thought-provoking presentation as usual. And so I believe the dialogue which will follow shortly will be very, very engaging. Before we do so, however, I would just want to recognize some of the business support organizations. Dr. Antoine spoke of the contribution of JMEA to the study that was done, and I'm happy to report that not only is JMEA in the house here today, but we have a number of other business support organizations who I believe are very important to the dialogue, and we hope to engage at this meeting and following meetings. So we have the president of the Shipping Association of Jamaica who is here. We have the president of the Mobay Chamber of Association. We have the president of the JBA, that's the Bankers Association. Our Chamber of Commerce president could not be here, but the vice president is here. We have Gloria from the Business Support Industry Association. The JHTA, very critical as well, they are here. And finally, the JSDA is also with us. So we're very well represented. So I have on our agenda remarks which will be given by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Barbados, the Honorable Minister Kerry Simmons, and I would ask him to approach the podium.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. No, I feel that I must begin by offering a word of apology on behalf of my Prime Minister. And there are those in the room who can bear witness to the fact that as I disembarked my vehicle, as I arrived here, I received a notice that PM Motley was unavoidably detained and that I was going to have to fill her shoes at virtually zero notice. I want to begin by saying that I embrace Mr. Siaga's optimism, not so much about the West Indies team, but his optimism generally. And I think that it is a very important point of departure because it takes me back mentally to the words that were uttered both by Prime Minister Siaga and by Prime Minister Motley, that this region can make it if we are prepared to try. I do not say that, ladies and gentlemen, tongue-in-cheek. We have some living examples of the success that this region is capable of. The Sandals success story, I think, is one which is now and has now impacted, Adam, virtually every island on the chain. And those who have not yet been impacted directly certainly have been impacted indirectly. And I think that that is an example of regional resilience and regional excellence and the high standard that our private sector can take us to. And in similar vein, as we must recognize, government has a role to play in this. And I stand in a country which is now symbolic of economic resurgence. And I will not go much further because I know we're coming close to that time when one must not appear to be partisan. But it is vitally important that we recognize the transformation and the economic resurgence taking place here in Jamaica. But I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that, you know, I listened to Dr. Antoine very carefully. And I think, Patrick, we owe you a certain debt of gratitude. The truth is that Patrick has invited us to do what, and let me put it the other way around. For my sins, let me tell you just a little short story. For my sins, I have been asked by the Prime Minister of Barbados to be what she defines as a senior minister coordinating the productive sector of the country. That means that though we have a tourism minister and an energy minister and a commerce minister and an international business minister, et cetera, all of those things that earn foreign exchange, ultimately they feed up to me to remove bottlenecks and so on and to make the economy take over fast as we try to get out of our IMF program, which we did. But it caused me to have to use a bird's eye perspective on the Barbados economy, and frankly speaking, as Foreign Trade Minister, on the regional economy that I perhaps might not otherwise have done. And as I listen to Patrick, I think that he has struck a very important theme, and that is, are we doing enough to advance our own interests? And in this region, to be frank with you, we obviously have been afflicted by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, but the truth is that equally sometimes we may bellyache when perhaps we should look in the mirror and recognize and think about what could we have done differently and done better. And so when Patrick asked today, and I made a little note about the question of whether we're utilizing preferences sufficiently in the CBI, which has been around for decades, and clearly the answer was no, we have not. And equally, when he asked the question of whether we are deepening the growth opportunities that we have, and again, I think the answer is no, not sufficiently. And he raises the matter of the global carbon tax, and quite rightly so, but at a point when it is virtually on our doorstep, a couple of months away from a signing date. And this should and could have been a major point of discussion across the region many moons ago. And Patrick, I go further. We are seeing the carbon border adjustment mechanism implemented by the European Union a few years ago, now being replicated in England. As recently as a couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Carney in Canada has mooted this as a route that the Canadians will go. And the question must now be asked, are we going to be confronted with a green form of protectionism, which perhaps we need to lend our voices to and raise our voices against in the early stages, in the embryonic stages of these things being planned and rolled out and discussed, because we don't want to wait until the last minute to find that we're trying to get through an aperture that has narrowed considerably due to our own, perhaps our own unintended and unwitting negligence. So I say that as a point of departure, and I reflect as I speak on behalf of the Prime Minister of Barbados on a point that she raises with us in Cabinet all the time. And that is that, you know, we have to be prepared as not only individuals, but as member states of this community to pivot, to respond quickly in order to try to thrive, in order to try to arrive at the level of prosperity. We have to be willing to innovate, to do all those things that we must do and that we know in our hearts and minds we must do in order not to be paralyzed by the circumstances which come our way. And we are living, colleagues, in a world which is increasingly unpredictable. The global environment has been met with a number of disruptions, and I think over the last few years we've all lived it. Supply chains were disrupted. Our borders were virtually closed due to a pandemic that had nothing to do with us, but the consequences of which were extremely consequential for us. And let me remind you that these tourism and travel dependent economies of this region were among the top 20 most impacted and negatively affected GDP declining countries in the world. A lot of language simply to say that our GDP in the region collapsed at a rate faster than any other in the world. And so we've lived it. And I think that the reality is that for us, the collaboration that Patrick speaks about between the private sector and government really has to be the way to go. Now, Gervais, you spoke a lot about diversification. I think you're 100% right. And I could say to you that we must also add to the diversification the quest for resilience. And that resilience, I think, colleagues, has to be found in the way in which we go about now dealing and conducting with our sourcing relationships. We have traditionally maintained a very North Atlantic lens. Sourcing, I think, and you've heard it from Gervais, you've heard it from Patrick, sourcing now can be something that we usefully do, and I think the last couple of slides that Patrick showed indicates that, you know, from other parts of the world, including right next door to us in Brazil, there is the possibility of obtaining virtually 75 to 80% of all of the raw materials and inputs that we source from other places, but at substantially lower prices. Why then is this not priority number one? Resilience in terms of diversification geopolitically. And I make that point because we live in an era where there is an unprecedented fracture in the alliances which we previously held dear. I say to Kamina all the time that I defer to her as colleague foreign minister on perhaps the very best and most delicate way to put things. And I think that simply saying it is an unprecedented fracture in the alliance is a very delicate way of putting it. But we know that that geopolitical problem exists. So why then, in terms of building out our own resilience, do we not seek to build those or rework trading relationships with other people with whom we feel we perhaps might be able to partner in a more sustainably reliable way. And again, for us in Barbados, we realized that we missed the boat, and I think this region, colleagues, missed the boat when we had discussions taking place in the earlier part of this decade on the question of production integration. I think the President of Guyana then, President Jagdeo, former Prime Minister Arthur in Barbados, former Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson here in Jamaica, and others were among the architects of this production integration idea. And today we have been brought forcefully back to that point where we were in 2003 and 4 by virtue of the circumstances that have been thrust upon us. And it is now very clear to us that if we can source raw materials from Guyana and from Suriname, and we can do the value added in a Bridgetown, Barbados, where or in Trinidad and Tobago, where the industrial bases are more developed, where the servicing sector is more advanced, where we have a point of departure at our airport and seaports that are reaching virtually every part of North America, and being able to connect us on a daily basis. And in the case of Barbados, I think flights to the UK, flights to Canada, flights to England, we're talking in some instances over 10 per day. Why then are we not moving some of that raw materials, some of those commodities that we source out of Suriname and Guyana, doing the value added in Bridgetown and getting it into Canada, getting it into England, etc., feeding our diaspora with the things that our diaspora knows about this region? There's a certainty of the market, but yet we do not do it. And I think that in a real sense, the opportunity that now sits on our doorstep in renewable energy is going to be the test case for us all. And colleagues in the Caribbean, I need not tell you, we live in a region of sunshine. In the Eastern Caribbean, the energy mix is rich. There are those who can power their countries and have substantial reserves by virtue of geothermal energy. There are those of us who could power our countries and have substantial reserves by virtue of ocean technology. There are those of us who could do it by wind and who could do it by just the sunlight. And there is that rich energy mix. And the President of the European Union, at the last heads of government meeting we had in Barbados, which was only in February of this year, says, we'll take all that you can if you can just translate it into hydrogen and sell it. This must be the question of our time. Why are we not moving with greater alacrity towards building out the opportunities we have to make ourselves more resilient and to diversify, as Gervais has quite rightly urged us to do? And so therefore, I say to you simply that if Prime Minister Motley was here, I believe that these would be the themes that she would be striking against the background that Brother Siaga has pointed us to, that we have to be optimistic. Even in the most difficult of times, we have to be optimistic. And though West Indies cricket may not now be that which it used to be, we as a people can be all that we used to be and all that we can be into the future. And on that note, I would want to urge you, therefore, to lend your best efforts as a private sector towards the collaboration with the governments of this region as we work together to advance the common interests of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Simmons. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce a man who needs no introduction. He's not Prime Minister Siaga. He is indeed our own Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Andrew Holness, who will give a special address.
Minister Simmons, I forgive you. But I understand. And indeed, you know, I actually take it as a compliment. Colleagues, heads of government of Caribbean community, honorable ministers, Mr. Gervais Warner, chairman of the CARICOM Private Sector Organization, Mr. Dr. Patrick Antoine, Chief Executive Officer, Technical Director of the CARICOM Private Sector Organization, Mr. Mitri Siaga, President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, distinguished representatives of the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As Chair of CARICOM, I'm pleased to join you this morning for this important engagement. Let me begin by acknowledging the leadership and enterprise of the regional private sector. Yeah, I would acknowledge. Let me also acknowledge Sandals and Adam Stewart for hosting this event. The transformation we seek, we know it is not possible without the private sector. The history of the Caribbean has been ambivalent about its private sector. But I'm happy to say that certainly in the last decade, there has been a closer embrace of the private sector as partners for development. I believe I speak for all the heads that we see the private sector as the engine of growth. Our job is to get out of your way. Our job is to facilitate, and our job is to make the playing field level and to give you a good wicket on which you can go and make the runs. We are operating in a global environment marked by persistent volatility, rising protectionism of all kinds, new and emerging ways to protect markets, disruptions of all kinds, including climate-related disruptions, geopolitical tensions, and economic fragmentation. These dynamics exert disproportionate pressure on small island developing states like ours and underscores the urgency. I agree with you, Gervais. It's not just resilience and diversification. We have to pursue these with urgency. And in addition to urgency, we must be strategic. And sometimes being strategic means that we have to be unemotional about the decisions that we have to make. We don't take away emotional intelligence. We apply it, and that emotional intelligence will sometimes tell you, you have to be unemotional. To that end, we must act in a more coordinated and collaborative manner, drawing on the full capabilities of both public and private sectors. No government can respond alone, and no business can thrive in isolation. This is a shared agenda that demands shared action. And we would have seen this in the presentation made by Dr. Antoine. Excellent presentation. At the center of that shared agenda is the CARICOM single market and economy, our most important framework for achieving regional collaboration and strategic cooperation. Jamaica remains steadfast in our belief that this is essential for achieving economies of scale, improving competitiveness, and transforming lives and livelihoods for our people. And at this point, I would say that, yes, individually our economies are small, but collectively, the sum of our parts are greater than the whole. Yes, you can clap at that point. But yet, intra-CARICOM trade remains just at 11.2% of our total trade. So there is great room for us to expand internally our own trade and development. As global shocks multiply and traditional markets become more uncertain, the CSME must be treated not just as an economic aspiration, but as a critical shield of resilience and self-reliance. We must eliminate inefficiencies and regulatory delays so that Caribbean goods and services can move across the region with speed, certainty, and confidence. But to unlock the full potential of the CSME, we must also address persistent inequities in trade flows and productive capacities. This includes improving regional transport and logistics, resolving supply chain gaps, and boosting domestic production in sectors where we hold competitive advantage. Equally important is the need to modernize our trade regimes. The recent 60th quoted meeting advanced reforms to the Common External Tariff and Rules of Origin and endorsed the framework for a regional industrial policy. These reforms are crucial to strengthening competitiveness and ensuring that all member states benefit equitably from regional trade. We commend the sectoral working groups and the CPSO for their contributions to these efforts. As chair, Jamaica is committed to building on the work of Prime Minister Motley and others to accelerate CSME implementation. On the matter of the implementation of the CSME, our region is very diverse, and we are at different stages of development. And that means that we have to take the African approach, which is, we all want to get there fast, but the truth is we have to get there together. So it means that we have to be sensitive to all the particular challenges and idiosyncrasies that exist within our CARICOM family to ensure that at the end of the day, we all get there together. But none of our aspirations will be possible without security. And the CSME can only function in a stable, safe, and rules-based environment. Jamaica has made bold investments in our national security platform. Over $500 million has been invested in our national security since 2016, which have transformed our public safety infrastructure and boosted investor confidence. But transnational criminal networks continue to pose serious threats across CARICOM, undermining economic development, fueling violence, and weakening public trust. CARICOM must now intensify its collective efforts to dismantle these criminal networks through stronger intelligence sharing, border protection, cyber defense, and joint enforcement strategies. When we speak of security, sometimes the perspective is that we're focusing on violence and kinetic forms of security operations. But it is also the security of our telecommunication system. It's the security of our financial and banking system. It's the security of our judicial system. And it is the security of our cyber systems. It's the security of our shipping and logistics systems. And this is what this investment in security is all about. Yes, it is protecting public order and citizen security, but it is also protecting our economic and commercial security. and we must remain laser-focused on the worsening humanitarian and security crisis in Haiti. This is not only a national emergency, it is a regional priority. The success of our region is tied to the security and stability of all our member states. A secure Haiti is essential to a secure Caribbean. And I hate to speak of it in this way, but it should also be mentioned as I am speaking to the private sector. Haiti is a tremendous opportunity waiting to be discovered. It is an incredible market, people with incredible talent and resources. And if we could assist our brothers and sisters in Haiti to settle the issues, strengthen the state, the region as a whole would benefit economically from Haiti, the resolution of the situation. I'm going to dedicate great effort, as did Prime Minister Motley, to ensure that the situation in Haiti is again brought to the fore of global attention. I believe that we can have an impact, a positive impact on resolving the situation in Haiti. But more than that, the situation that gangs have taken over a state is not a good example for this region. And the longer it stays in that state, the longer it will be a threat for all states in this region. Beyond our borders, we are also facing escalating external trade challenges. Recent challenges in the U.S. trade policy, recent changes rather, in the U.S. trade policy, specifically the implementation of a 10% baseline tariff on all imports from CARICOM countries. Trinidad and Guyana may have a slightly elevated structure, represents a significant shift away from decades of preferential access under the Caribbean Basin Initiative. For Jamaica and many others, the CBI has been vital to competitiveness of our agricultural, light manufacturing, and food and beverage exports. Our response must include deepening engagement with the U.S. administration to advocate for the restoration of preferential access. And I want to assure members of the private sector here that as chairman of our external negotiation mechanism, and Ambassador McCook is the point person, I know that we are meeting with and lobbying with the United States on a regular basis, and that we have engaged the U.S. Trade Representative, and we are working on your behalf to get the best results. Our response must include accelerating intra-regional trade under the CSME to reduce over-dependence on any single market. And I'm pleased to say that we have designated Minister Simmons from Barbados and Minister Johnson-Smith from Jamaica to lead a team to review and see how we can remove, without the impact of disruption of such changes, non-tariff barriers intra-regionally. But I'm very happy for the insightful and profound statements of Gervais that these non-tariff barriers were erected by us. And he was very diplomatic, though a businessman, in saying that, you know, sometimes it was at the prodding of businessmen. And therefore, I think in this dispensation, with a new outlook on our possibilities, we welcome the prodding of businessmen to remove these non-tariff barriers. And expanding trade and investment partnerships with Africa, Latin America, and Asia to diversify risk and seize new growth opportunities. After this event, Jamaica will be signing the AfriMex, I keep saying AfriMex, the Afri-Exim Partnership Agreement, which is a signal of our intent to diversify and expand, and in particular to engage Africa with trade in the region. The private sector has a crucial role to play here. We encourage you to embrace digital export platforms, participate in global trade expos, and pursue cross-border partnerships in priority areas such as agribusiness, creative industries, and digital services. These efforts will help the Caribbean remain competitive and globally relevant in the face of shifting dynamics. In addition to the key priorities I have already outlined, allow me to briefly highlight a few other complementary priorities that should inform our discussion going forward. Deepening food and energy security cooperation with coordinated investments in agri-tech, renewable energy, and climate-smart practices. Our region is incredibly gifted. Minister Simmons pointed out, you know, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad, oil, and natural gas. But every island is bathed with incredible solar energy. Some of us have wind. Some of us have hydro. And some have geothermal. So we have it in the region. The question is, how can we cooperate to use it beneficially for all? And I think the answer to that really lies in the business community being innovative and finding the economic opportunity, and the government providing the regulatory and de-risking support to get it done. I know individually we are all struggling, well, most of us, with the overarching cost of living issue. And a big part of the cost of living facing our citizens would be the cost of energy. How do we get this cost of energy down? And the utilization of renewables, in my opinion, is an important part of that strategy. I take great note of what the Europeans have said to us. Kerry, you pointed out that if we can convert our solar and wind and other renewables into hydrogen, that there is a market, a huge market that we could supply endlessly. I am throwing that out, reinforcing that to the business community here. We need our business community to take greater interest, to apply greater innovation in the energy sector to bring the cost of energy down in the region. Of course, we have already said harmonizing standards and removing non-tariff barriers within CARICOM. That's largely a government effort, and I give you the assurance that we're going to continue and intensify the work that has already started in this regard. Enhancing financial access for MSMEs, including through the development of the CARICOM Regional Stock Exchange, which, it's underway, but it has slowed. And improve capital market integration. We have to accelerate digital transformation and cross-border e-commerce to help regional firms, especially smaller ones, scale across markets. And importantly, promoting youth engagement and workforce readiness through integrated training, certification, and labor mobility frameworks. 10 years ago, the challenge in Jamaica would be that we don't have enough jobs. The challenge in Jamaica today is that we don't have enough skilled and trained workers. So it's a good problem to have, but if it is not solved quickly, it becomes a binding constraint on growth. So for us, we must include in our development plan training and youth development, because it is not only a matter of skills of our young people entering the workforce, it is more so a matter of their attitude to work, which is a significant cost to the private sector, because even though you may get your workforce trained, you still have to invest a significant resource in trying to get them to the point where their attitude towards your business and your work is such that it supports your bottom line. So I want the business community to know that CARICOM will be looking generally at training, but we're also very much concerned about the attitude of our young people entering the workforce in terms of the development of pro-social values and pro-growth values, which will support industry with creativity and productivity. These, alongside our core agenda on the CSME, regional security and global trade positioning, represents the essential building blocks of a resilient and competitive CARICOM. So let me once again thank the CPSO and the PSOJ for your steadfast partnership. You are not just stakeholders, you are co-authors of the region's future. I look forward to a productive and forward-looking dialogue this morning. And Adam, do we wave at the plane? And the flight arrived on time.
Indeed, a rousing round of applause for the incoming chair of CARICOM. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. So we know that our heads of government and heads of delegation are very strapped for time and will have to momentarily be leaving us. However, as we are engaged as partners and all have been aligned on this theme of engagement, we hope you can stay with us just a few minutes longer while we start the open dialogue, which will be led by our chairman of CPSO, Gervais Warner.
Morning, everyone. We ran late, but we have a magical moment. So I don't know if anyone has questions, comments. Even if heads of delegations have questions or comments you'd like to share with the private sector or vice versa. There are microphones in the room. Please come forward and share. I thought, Brian, you were coming to say something. But this, let's not miss out on this opportunity to really form some strong engagement. So, who's first up? Okay. You can give the microphone to Jennifer here from Tropical Shipping. I know she has things to say. This is what will happen. I start to call on people, so.
President, good morning. Thank you, sir. After my Prime Minister speak and, my Jamaican heritage comes out, I give protocol to him, so I'm shutting up. He said everything that needs to be said. Thank you, PM. Mr. Chair, I bring greetings to all of us here today. My colleagues from Seaboard are here. We were in the fight to make it known very clearly that the Caribbean is a good place to do business. We don't have to beg. This idea of who we are as a group of people, and I could not have said it any better or described what Patrick Antoine was able to do. We came together as a force to say that the U.S. is truly a good trading partner, but the Caribbean is number 4. Largest trading partner, non-oil, in terms of what we export, or what we purchase to bring to the region. As a Caribbean shipping line, we came together and we said this fight was ours. The private sector had to take the lead in this. We asked for tangible data, information that made sense, and then we calculated $94 billion worth of trade. And you know who were the top 3 behind the Caribbean? The folks whom the U.S. has a recent agreement. They're called Mexico, Canada, and someplace else. This Caribbean has to be able to agree on a set of principles. And those principles were really, I think, what shaped the success, but also what we were able to lean on in terms of the leadership from the CARICOM member states. And we did it. So the question that I asked myself, as a regionalist, and a very proud heritage, I was born in Jamaica, but I was raised in the U.S. Virgin Islands. St. Croix is my home. And here was what made the Caribbean, I think, the success story, was when the U.S. Virgin Islands was beginning to shift from an agribusiness, an agri-industry, into what we call then the industrial base. Do you know where they came to recruit workers? Jamaica. My father worked in Alcan, in the bauxite plant, and his purpose was to do 2 things, was to take care of his children and to raise us to a place where we become contributors. St. Croix is repositioning itself because the refinery is no longer in existence. It's called PDVSA back then with Venezuela and Hess Oil. The recruitment of workers came from Guyana, Trinidad, and Suriname. And I keep hearing these familiar countries again coming together. My philosophy as a businesswoman is that we have the capacity to do it. But we are going to have to be realistic about how we approach the U.S. My colleague, Wazim Maula, is here. He's a Guyanese, by the way, and one of the most well-known and respected Caribbean leader in Washington, D.C. When we had to do what we had to do to save on the tariff, we agreed that we were going in with a position of strength, that we were going to go in as a collaborative force because we knew what we were able to say to the U.S. government. We did it. I say, let's do it again. The only thing that I'd want to encourage us to do, and this is not my saying, I was looking for something, and someone sent me this and it says, think big. This is the shrimp industry telling the United States, think big. We are able to think big, act big, because we're big.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody? William Mahfoud right here, please.
Thank you, Jervis.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the PM Holness, a.k.a. Siaga.
PM, before you leave, I have to make this point because it's really, before you leave, I made a point at the very first meeting of the CPSO executive in Trinidad. You remember, Jeremy?
You need to change that, Mike? Just talk loud.
So I made a point at that very first meeting in relation to what my own personal view about integration in CARICOM was going to be on the integration of the people, and the single market and economy should have complete freedom of movement of people. I know it's a very sore topic sometimes, but you, in your comments, PM, you made the point about the issues with relation to our labor force. There are opportunities for us even to look at Haiti as a place for us to find people to work in our factories, work in our farms. We cannot get sugarcane cutters here in Jamaica, and we need to find ways to bring people into Jamaica to work in some of these areas. There can be some measured arrangements put in place, and I believe the time is now. We must integrate the people and allow movement of people throughout the region for work.
PM, we used to have a means of doing that. One of the legacies of Cricket World Cup was a system to allow people to move, to come into one country and be able to move freely into the rest of the countries. Somehow we decided after World Cup cricket that we put that away. We built it, we did it, we can do it again. But one of the things I wanted to say, Jervis, is that what CPSO has shown is that good data, good analytics allows you to good results. And the problem we have, that I have been involved myself in many negotiations, is that we go to the table with information which is wanting. And what we don't have in the whole of the region is the ability to actually do the analytics which allows us to get the results that we want. And so one of the things that I think should be definitely an outcome of this is, and I know that we have some islands with very few people able to do the work, but if we can network together so that there is a mechanism where we actually drive our decision making with good data, then I think we can get much better results. And finally, I want to say that one of the big issues, whether it's the IMO issue, whether it is looking at the transition to greener energy, is that our projects are tiny. Many of the projects are tiny. If we can make a decision at CARICOM, and I'm talking to who has the ability to do this, can we not set priorities, because the agenda is so huge? If we say energy is one of those things, can we not say, what would it take to make a single market for energy in terms of the regulation? That allows us then to be able to attract capital, to attract projects which are not just in one country, but are in several. So we can finance projects, much larger projects, and bring the right kinds of partnership to the table. Because the small projects mean higher costs. And if we can do it deliberately, if we do the energy thing, and then set the other priority, what's the next priority? But I think it's important that we remove the regulations that inhibit or at least harmonize. Let's look at harmonizing regulations across some of these big issues which we have to face. But I think that the important things going forward, this whole business of analytics is important in making our decisions and going to the table when we negotiate. Because otherwise, we are, not only the second 11, we're probably the third or fourth 11.
Thank you, Pat. Good questions. On the issue, by the way, of free movement of people,